History is just filled with figures who cast these long, dark shadows, but there's maybe none that serves as a more powerful warning than Adolf Hitler. See, his story isn't just about one evil man. It's really about the catastrophic failure of an entire society. And it's a blueprint for tyranny that is still dangerously relevant today. So let's explore how it was built.
And this really is the central question, isn't it? It's a puzzle that's haunted historians for decades. How does a man, a rejected and pretty insignificant person, rise up to command a nation, unleash a world war, and orchestrate one of the most horrific genocides in human history? To even begin to understand the catastrophe, we have to understand the man who became the vessel for it.
You see, the monster wasn't born fully formed. He was forged in the fires of personal failure, national humiliation, and this really toxic brew of hateful ideas that were already simmering in early 20th century Europe. This timeline, it tells a story of constant rejection. Born in Austria-Hungary, he fails not once but twice to get into Vienna's Academy of Fine Arts. Then he serves in World War I, only to be completely consumed by bitterness at Germany's defeat, clinging to that poisonous stab-in-the-back myth. He joins a fringe political party, fails a coup attempt in 1923, and yet, through all this failure, his resentment just hardens and hardens, finally culminating in his appointment as chancellor in 1933. Every single failure became more fuel for a worldview that was built on blame.
And that worldview? It was all formalized in his manifesto, Mein Kampf. And right at its core was this terrifyingly simple idea, Lebensraum, living space. Now, this wasn't just about moving borders on a map. No, this was a non-negotiable demand for German racial domination of Eastern Europe. And it was going to be achieved through brutal conquest, the enslavement or murder of entire populations, and colonization. It was a vision of a world completely redrawn by violence. So the big question is, how did he sell this horrific vision to a modern, educated nation? Well, he didn't just seize power by force. He followed a methodical, almost repeatable process. This is the dictator's playbook, a blueprint for dismantling a democracy from the inside out.
The playbook really has 4 key steps, and they build on each other with this devastating logic. Okay, so step 1, find a convenient scapegoat. Step 2, launch an all-out attack on the truth itself. Step 3, seize total control of the state. And finally, step 4, build a cult of personality around the leader. Let's break down exactly how this works.
So the crucial point here is this. Complex problems are confusing. They're frustrating. A nation that's reeling from economic depression and military defeat is desperate for simple answers, and Hitler provided one. He said it wasn't your fault, it was their fault. He managed to channel all of that national anxiety and rage into a focused beam of hatred, aimed primarily at Jewish people and Marxists, blaming them for every single one of Germany's problems. And make no mistake, this wasn't some idea that developed over time. This quote, from all the way back in 1919, shows that the genocidal impulse was there from the very, very beginning of his political career. The scapegoating wasn't just a political tactic. It was the foundational goal. The removal and ultimately the extermination, that was the point all along. So, once you have a scapegoat, you have to control the narrative. The Nazis moved incredibly fast to crush any source of independent information. They shut down newspapers, they took over radio stations, and they poured state resources into this massive propaganda machine. The goal was simple: replace reality with their own version, a version where the leader was always right and the enemy was always lurking just around the corner. With the truth under assault, the next logical step was to dismantle democracy itself. Using the Reichstag fire as a pretext, Hitler pushed through decrees that just suspended civil liberties. Then came the Enabling Act, which, well, it effectively allowed him to rule by decree. Parliament became irrelevant, opposition parties were banned, rivals were arrested or killed. In just a matter of months, the entire democratic machinery of the state was hollowed out and repurposed for tyranny. And the final step was to make loyalty personal. Through the sheer power of spectacle, I mean those massive rallies, the swastika being absolutely everywhere, Hitler was elevated from a politician into some kind of messianic figure. The army and the civil servants were actually forced to swear an oath of personal loyalty directly to him, not to the country, cementing his absolute power. But, there's this persistent myth about the Nazi regime that despite all the horrors, they were, effective managers, that they fixed the economy and restored national pride. It is a dangerous,
dangerous illusion that needs to be shattered when you look at the actual price of their power.
This slide really shows the stark contrast between the illusion and the reality. The illusion was one of progress. Yeah, unemployment went down, but that's because unions were suppressed and workers' rights were totally eliminated. Yeah, industry grew, but it was fueled by massive, unsustainable military spending. The famous Autobahn, that was part of a war machine, financed by stealing wealth from Jewish citizens and preparing for a war of plunder. This wasn't an economic miracle. It was the economy of a nation on a path to total war.
And here is the true cost, measured in human lives. 6 million. 6 million Jewish men, women, and children systematically murdered in the Holocaust. But the horror didn't stop there. The Nazi genocidal project was vast. When you start to include the Roma, Poles, Soviet prisoners of war, disabled people, and so many others, the total number of civilians murdered by the regime's policies is estimated to be as high as 17 million. And the ultimate price, that was paid by the entire world. That ideology of Lebensraum and racial hatred, it didn't just lead to genocide. It led directly to the Second World War, a conflict started by the Nazi regime that resulted in an estimated 75 million deaths worldwide. This is the real legacy of their achievements. Now, it's easy to look at all of this as just ancient history, right? A horror confined to black and white photos. But the blueprint itself, it's timeless. The question for us is, what warning signs from that playbook echo in our world today? I mean, just think about it for a second. A charismatic leader who claims to be the sole voice of the real people. The deliberate creation of scapegoats to blame for really complex national problems. A sustained attack on the free press and independent courts. The spread of alternative facts to create a separate reality. The slow, creeping normalization of dehumanizing language against minorities. And the use of security forces to intimidate political opponents. These aren't just historical footnotes. They are the structural ingredients of authoritarianism, and they can appear anywhere, at any time. History has given us a clear, terrifying blueprint of how a democracy can die, and how a society can be led into an abyss. The warning signs are there. The real question is whether we have the courage and the wisdom to read them, and to act before it's too late.